evening. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Melissa Ridgen. As Winnipeg deals with record-breaking numbers of COVID-19 cases, First Nations across Manitoba are also facing a high number of cases. For months, First Nations were spared with having the virus enter communities, but not anymore. And many communities are reverting back to strict lockdowns. Brittany Hobson explains.
There are 366 active cases of COVID-19 on reserve in Manitoba. 17 communities in the province are currently dealing with the virus. Pimachikamak Cree Nation initiated a critical or code red on the province's pandemic response system after an outbreak occurred last month.
And that way, if you stop it from people from moving around, you can stop that thing from moving around, and you're going to treat these people and help them. And, then hopefully then we can go back to lowering our code red to orange or something like that. But we can never let our guard down, though.
Chief David Monia says 31 people have tested positive in the community. A team has set up an isolation tent and screening center. Some members have had to go to Winnipeg for alternative isolation accommodations. Contact tracing has been one of the biggest challenges. Monia says it's tedious but necessary.
It's very complicated, and it just leads to so many different places and stuff like that. It's hard to comprehend that.
The community is currently on a lockdown. Social media has been key in getting this message out. Monius provides daily updates through live streams and the radio station. He also encourages people to go online to foster interactions.
We are trying to manage as much as we can to deploy resources to those areas. And for people that are feeling mentally exhausted in their homes, and you have to help those people as well. So we do a lot of programming, like even online contests.
Mississippiwistic Cree Nation is also utilizing social media. The community is dealing with its first COVID case. Chief Heidi Cook gave an update on the situation during a lengthy Facebook live stream.
We recommend that everybody is staying home. There's an exception for outdoor recreation or outdoor activities like hunting if you're by yourself or with members of your household only. So no meeting up with people outside your household.
A code red is also in effect in the community until November 7th. While there have been several new restrictions implemented, a curfew is not one of them yet.
That's not something that we have planned. I suppose if there was issues with parties and that kind of thing, that would be when we start discussing that kind of a measure. Right now, we're asking everyone to stay home for the most part. So we hope that we don't have to make more rules.
First Nations people make up 20% of the active cases in the province, but this also includes people living off reserve. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Since that story, the total number of cases on Manitoba First Nations is up to 442. So 4 Cree Nations are calling for a temporary halt to work at a hydro construction site in northern Manitoba. The COVID-19 outbreak was declared at the Kiosk generating station last month. Nearby communities are concerned that Manitoba Hydro isn't doing enough to address the rising number of cases and believe that this will lead to outbreaks in nearby nations. Here's Brittany Hobson again with what they're asking for from the federal government.
There are a growing number of COVID-19 cases at the Kiosk generating station construction site. Chiefs from 4 Cree Nations near the site, along with other Indigenous leadership across the province, say it's time for the federal government to step in.
The chiefs' demands are not being met, and they are partners with Manitoba Hydro. They are not treated as partners. But today we're coming to the Prime Minister and asking him to intervene to make sure that the situation is under control.
The first case of COVID-19 found at the Manitoba Hydro project was reported on October 25th. The Crown Corporation says there are now 20 confirmed cases and are waiting on additional testing from 11 workers. There are currently 59 workers isolating in special dorm rooms on the site. The 4 Cree Nations are partners on the project and have been calling for a temporary shutdown in order to contain the outbreak. York Factory First Nation Chief Leroy Constant says their concerns have fallen on deaf ears.
I'm going to call Kiosk a super spreader. I'm going to say that right now. Right now, they haven't contained it. The leadership is frustrated beyond means, and we're here today to shine light on that.
The project employs approximately 200 members from the communities. Leadership worries the virus could spread. Fox Lake Cree Nation Chief Maurice Beardy says there is a breakdown in information from Hydro and the Northern Health Authority, making it difficult to determine who has tested positive.
How are we supposed to protect our members, our elders, and the people that we love all around us, our friends, our family, when this information that is being shared by Manitoba Hydro is being dealt with at the very, very, very minimal?
Leadership would like to see an updated pandemic plan from Hydro. They say conversations have stalled.
The virus is in their court now, so it all depends what they do. And if they don't come up to the plate and do what's right, then we will we'll come together as four chiefs and determine what our next steps is. But right now, it's Manitoba Hydro and the province need to step up and do their due diligence.
The province moved the site to a critical level or code red on Tuesday. Manitoba Hydro says it's reduced its workforce and have tested all workers on site. They have also closed the dining hall and the camp's gym. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Systemic racism within the RCMP was under the microscope last week, and RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki was the target. She had to explain to MPs how she's dealing with it during the Public Safety Committee meeting. Annette Francis has that story.
It took no time at all for NDP MP Jack Harris to get to the heart of the matter, how Commissioner Brenda Lucki plans to deal with systemic racism in the RCMP, while the Assembly of First Nations called for her resignation last month.
I do want to know how, in the face of a lack of confidence by one of the significant victim groups of systemic racism, the Indigenous people of Canada, how in the face of a lack of confidence by them can they expect you to deal effectively with that within the police force? Have you learned anything more about systemic racism since your last appearance before this committee?
According to Lucki, she's been listening, learning, and consulting with Indigenous leaders, and plans are being developed. One is looking at police intervention tactics, and another at mental health calls.
Again, to share best practices and to find the best ways to deal with such calls, because they are obviously on the increase. We are looking at our data sets, and we've recently put many of those statistics on our website, such as physical intervention, the use of physical intervention, our calls for service, and we added employee diversity.
Lucki faced more criticism from the Parliamentary Secretary for Crown Indigenous Relations.
When can we expect direct and concrete action on racism? This is the issue of our time, in my opinion, even more so than the pandemic. And
Lucki says the change in policies and procedures will make a difference, including a change in recruitment.
We're looking at the way in which we recruit. We want to make sure that we are in fact reflective of the communities that we serve. And so we want to make sure our proactive recruiters are reflective of that, and within our systems that within the recruiting systems, we bring in the right people.
Commissioner Lucki says anti-racism training will also be mandatory. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
To Thunder Bay now, where the manslaughter trial of Braden Bushby has come to an end. The judge hearing the case is not expected to deliver a verdict until December 14th. Bushby, of course, is accused of causing the injury that killed Barbara Kentner. He admitted to throwing the trailer hitch that struck her while she was walking down a street in January of 2017. She died 5 months later. But Bushby's lawyer said that it was the underlying health conditions that she suffered that killed Kentner, while the Crown argues that the trailer hitch injury killed her. We need to take a break, but coming up, life in the fast lane for Mohawks of Akwesasne. We'll explain. Stay with us. Residents of Akwesasne, the Mohawk territory straddling Quebec, Ontario, and the United States, woke up with one less headache last week. They now have a dedicated priority lane at the Cornwall border crossing. Some feel it's good news, while others foresee issues. Lindsay Richardson explains.
It's the morning of the U.S. election, and Canada's side of the Cornwall border crossing is quiet. As of 7 a.m., Canadian Border Services opened a priority crossing lane for Akwesasne residents in a collaboration with the Mohawk Council.
The intent of the domestic lane is to create a smoother, faster border crossing experience by separating the domestic traffic from the international traffic.
Cornwall is the only port of entry with both local and international traffic. Akwesasne falls on the borders of Quebec, Ontario, and New York State. Its residents make up 70% of traffic at the Cornwall crossing, so CBSA is hoping to make things easier.
International traffic, including those coming from St. Regis and Snai, will use the main lanes, 1 through 3. The domestic travelers, anyone who has not left Canada, will use lane 4, the domestic lane.
I elected when I was 24.
Akwesasne Grand Chief Abraham Benedict says the priority lane is not a new idea. Wait times have long frustrated Akwesasne Rono. Some people say there's more to it.
I've had border guards try to lecture me on the way the real world works. You know, I've been searched. I've had my mail gone through in the car. You know, I've been patted down. So all of that's happened, and you know, everybody's got a story. They're an occupation of our land. They have all the guns, so we comply because they have all the guns.
Abuse of power, for example, is not a new concern. In 2017, Jody Swamp tried to cross from the Ontario side with $300 worth of firecrackers in his car. He was criminally charged. But in 2019, a judge dropped all charges, saying Swamp was traveling domestically and border guards had no right to search him.
A weight was lifted off my shoulders, you know, having them come down on me for no reason.
Swamp is leading a class action lawsuit alleging discrimination, detention, or search and seizures at this checkpoint. The COVID-19 pandemic slowed the certification process. The lawsuit is still in limbo, but residents remain concerned for their fundamental rights.
From a traditional point of view, we've never left our territory. So we're not leaving Canada or the U.S. We're our own. Doesn't matter if we're small. There's a lot of small countries out there. I think we're bigger than some of those small countries.
The lane will be open daily for the next 6 months, at which point the pilot project will be reviewed. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Cornwall, Ontario.
In Alberta, Indigenous policing is now being recognized under the Provincial Police Act. It'll give First Nations police services more freedom when it comes to making decisions. Members of the Blood Tribe Police say that it's a step in the right direction, but it's not just recognition that's needed. Tamara Pimentel has that story.
Here on the Blood Tribe, the community's police service has its own dispatch and communication center, a cell block, and 37 police officers. They've been operating for 30 years, but Inspector of Admin Support Farika Prince says it hasn't been easy.
For the past 30 years, we've been receiving the same training as our policing partners. We follow the same standards, we're subject to the same rules, the same hiring practices, and yet we're significantly underfunded compared to our policing partners.
There are 3 Indigenous police services in Alberta, and in October, the Alberta government announced it will recognize those forces in the Provincial Police Act. This gives Indigenous policing more power to make decisions, hire and appoint their own officers, issue tickets, and enforce community bylaws without approval by the province. It's something Indigenous police forces have been seeking for years. But Prince says one thing is still missing.
I mean, it's great to get this recognition. It's great that we're going to be able to govern ourselves. But what we're missing here is the funding that goes along with it.
Even with this announcement, Indigenous policing in Alberta is still seen as a program. It gets program funding by the province and federal government. Last year's budget was at roughly $6 million for the Blood Tribe Police, but that funding isn't always guaranteed. It needs to be renewed every 1 to 5 years.
We need to be moved from a program to essential service.
Police Chief Kyle Meltingtallow says essential service funding would bring a sense of security to the community.
They want to feel safe. They want their crime to be solved to the best of its ability. And they want their situations addressed in a timely manner.
Blaise Bomer, press secretary for the Minister of Justice, says funding might be possible in the future through grants.
There are other police grants that the province delivers, and we're certainly open to keeping conversations open with First Nations police services to see if and when those grants could be applicable.
With over 1,400 square kilometers to cover, to its community, the Blood Tribe Police Service is essential, and Prince says gaining that recognition is a step in the right direction, but hopes that in the future, changes happen to Indigenous police funding.
Indigenous people deserve quality public safety, and when they're underfunding Indigenous police services, they're basically saying that public safety in an Indigenous community with their own police service isn't as important.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News on the Blood Reserve.
Time for another break, but when we come back, I'll introduce you to an up-and-coming hockey star and fundraising efforts underway to help him get where he's going. Stay with us. Welcome back. One young Cree teen is turning to some out-of-the-box fundraising efforts to advance his dream of becoming a professional hockey player. Mariko Bercier is attending one of the country's leading hockey programs, and to do so, he created a line of merchandise that ties in his love of the game with his culture. Brittany Hobson brings us more.
Mariko Bercier's love for hockey has taken him to a place young players dream of. In September, Bercier moved to Saskatchewan to attend the highly regarded Athol Murray College of Notre Dame.
A lot of pro people come here. So many NHLers came here. There's better education here, way better hockey here.
The school is home to the Notre Dame hockey program, one of the most recognized hockey development programs in Canada. Bercier is from Opaskwayak and Mosayagun Cree Nations. He first visited the school in 2017 for a goalie training camp. A chance to attend the school full-time came up this past summer.
So we sat down with Mariko in August and we asked him what he wanted to do, whether it was to try out again for the AAA team or to take a chance to go to Notre Dame. The opportunity was there for him, and we wanted to know that we want him to know that the support would be there from both sides of the family.
The move came with a hefty price tag. So Bercier decided to create a merchandise line to help cover some of the costs. He created a logo incorporating his past and future.
The goalie means the people that supported me, my coaches, my friends, my supporters who believe in me that I'll make it far. Number 30 means where I started, the Paw Huskies. I couldn't have been here without the Paw Huskies. The feather was for my ancestors, and my grandpa supported me lots, and my cookums.
The family started making t-shirts and sweaters in September. They sold out within 3 hours. Bercier's mother, Savannah Sais, says the support has been phenomenal.
As I walk through the community and to see, to see people wearing this logo, it's just a really great feeling about how, many supporters that he already has. Our family is really grateful and honored. We're really honored for even someone just willing to wear his logo daily.
A piece from the line even made it into the hands of Edmonton Oilers defenseman Ethan Bear.
I feel excited. I feel famous in sort of way. I feel like everyone is supporting me, which is good. I just love it when I see people wear my shirt.
While it's not easy for a parent to let their child go, Sea says she's proud to see Bercier chase his dreams.
The opportunities that he has already is just an eye opener for many, even for myself and many parents that want the best for their kids. I always say this to them: home is always going to be home. My boy will always be here. So go out and explore and do your thing.
Brittany Hubson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Got to get myself some of that gear. An Alberta-based comic book artist is working with the world's biggest comic book company, Marvel Comics, to help produce a new comic that features Indigenous superheroes. And the stories are written and drawn by Indigenous talent. Chris Stewart brings us that story.
I believe it's called a Genosian.
Kyle Charles is showing some of his hand-drawn pages for his latest comic book project. Charles is drawing and inking a short story featuring a Native American superhero. It's to be part of a series called Marvel Indigenous Voices. His work is featured in the upcoming issue #1 that has a worldwide release. Charles has worked with big publishers before, but this is his first collaboration with Marvel.
So I'm the illustrator for a 10-page short that involves Danny Moonstar from the New Mutants, and it's about her helping out a new mutant who's discovering their powers, and they actually live on the reservation down in Arizona.
Charles says growing up, there were no Indigenous people working in comics to look up to.
As somebody who grew up without any representation in the industry, I can tell you that even just one small contribution like this, it's just like, it's just the first of many, I'm sure. It's huge. It would have been amazing to have somebody to relate to or look up to.
Now Charles has youth looking up to him.
Friends of mine or extended family come to me and tell me that hey, my son or daughter is starting to draw and really getting excited once they heard that you're doing this, and it's the most important thing. It's the most cherished thing, is to have the youth come up and really have something to believe in.
Vincent Joel is the owner of Wonder Harbor and Wonderland Comics. He worked with Marvel to create a special, unique cover of the comic just for his 2 stores in Edmonton and Grand Prairie. Kyle Charles designed the variant cover featuring Alberta-born Wolverine and Silver Fox. Joel ordered 3,000 copies and wants to distribute them to schools and friendship centers across Canada.
And it's really incredible when their vision and our vision coalesce, they align. We want to be able to give back to the community and allow Indigenous communities across Canada and North America to know that the only thing stopping you from achieving what Kyle has achieved is hard work. That's the only barrier.
Marvel Indigenous Voices comes out November 17th at Wonder Harbor and Wonderland Comics, with the full release everywhere on the 18th. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Very cool. Well, that is your news for this weekend. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks so much for joining us. If you missed anything, of course, you can find it on our website, aptnnews.ca. Take your medicines and stay healthy. We'll see you next week.